Okay, everybody, let's get started. I'm Al Morton, Bmwg co-chair for this session. My co-chair Sarah Banks hasn't joined us yet, but I hope she will. And it's a very early Thursday morning in U.S. Eastern Time, dark zero, but in our working area time, it's 12 noon on Thursday. And so we're going to start the meeting now here for IETF 109. If you're not subscribed to the Bmwg list and would like to be, please go to this address, which you can find in the meeting slides. You can download that with the meeting materials. All right. So most important is our note well. And if you've been attending sessions so far this week, you've seen this a few times, but as a special part of the top here that I've started, I want to remind everybody that we work as individuals and we try to be nice to each other. And 99.9% of the time that has always happened in Bmwg in my experience. Also, it's a reminder of the IETF policies in effect. Various topics such as patents and codes of conduct. This talk or this little slide here is meant to point you in the right direction. And if you have IPR associated with your contributions or your participation in this session, contribution is defined as almost anything active, like a statement at the microphone or typing a message into the chat box. Please identify any IPR associated with that. If you have questions about it, there's plenty of background information. All right, so here's our agenda. Now, as you guys can see, so far I'm all alone, and but what I have done is to post the agenda that I've been mailing out into the CodeMD note-taking tool. So actually, note-taking and really just decision capturing should be very easy tonight. And so then let me quickly ask for some help from one or two note takers who can do a little note taking for us here. And I suppose everybody knows how to unmute their mic under the message that is your name at the top left on your browser. There's an unmute button, and that's where you can identify yourself as someone who can really help me out tonight.
Oh, so I can't hear anything anymore, but I could take notes.
Oh, that's great, Bill. Thank you. What was it you said before you can take notes?
Apparently, okay. So apparently, when I hit the mic, okay, I've got a weird feedback. If I unmute or if I mute the mic, yeah, I can hear fine. Okay, I'm fine. Never mind.
All right. Good. Thanks very much, Bill. Jabber is something we'll all be able to see in the chat panel. I'll ask your help to monitor Jabber with me, and I've already mentioned the IPR and the notorious blue sheets that we always used to use at the face-to-face meetings are now collected automatically, so we don't have that to worry about. Okay, tonight's agenda, and I'll ask for any bashing at the end. We'll do the working group status and then the 3 working group drafts on EVPN, next generation firewall benchmarking. Back-to-back frame benchmarks, and then on to the proposals. Just a quick status on the Yang data model, some slides on the refactoring of VNF benchmarking automation draft. We'll hear some more about the 5G transport benchmarking, considerations for benchmarking network performance in containerized infrastructures. I was able to get those updated slides posted, and we'll display those. Don't worry about that. And then discussion of future prospects for the multiple loss ratio search, the network's functions, service density, and probabilistic loss ratio search. Those are all three drafts, of which it looks like I meant to delete the drafts for all of those, but they're in the agenda and they're in the Code EMD note taking. And then we've got some testing at the end associated with the draft upgrade to benchmarking methodology with a open source tool, SIIT test. So, any bashes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, I think we'll move ahead. I'd like to make sure everybody knows that our, let's see, I'm just going down the list of names here. We've got 21 people, and the Bmwg Area Director Advisor is Warren Kamari. So when Warren's with us, and he will be able to comment on our work as we go. Vladimir, I see you. I see you in the queue here. Let's see, what do I do? All right, I can go ahead. Oh, we're okay. Grant screen, revoke screen. Yeah, Vladimir, I haven't been able to hear you yet. No, still nothing. Well, I really hope this isn't going to be a one-way meeting. It looks like you've got audio available, but we can't hear you speaking, Vladimir. And yet you're still in the queue. So let's see. Remote screen, grant screen. Why don't you try typing something in the chat, the chat panel, Vladimir, and maybe we'll understand what you're trying to get to on us.
So I just entered something in chat and nothing showed up.
Oh, really?
Hi, sorry to interject. Yeah, there was a bug in Miteco at startup, so you need to reload the page to get the chat working. It was fixed at the beginning of the session. Apologies for that.
I'm sorry. Who was that? Oh,
Sorry,
Lorenzo?
Lorenzo from Miteco. So I was just explaining that there was an issue connecting the Jabber rooms at startup that we fixed as soon as the room was started, but people had to rejoin in order for that to work.
So does that mean everybody has to rejoin?
I think some people rejoined already because we notified in advance, but some people may have missed this message. So there may be some people that have their Jabber room disconnected at the moment, if they are using the Miteco interface, I mean.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, I'm a little. I got to tell you, I'm a little reluctant to close the session down now that we're rolling here. So, I mean, if individuals want to drop and rejoin, that's and then test the chat out that way, that's fine. If I don't know whether that will do any good, but in any case, we're going to forge ahead. So feel free to jump in on the microphone, assuming your microphone works with you know, like an immediate request for the floor or to join the microphone queue. And so then we got a quick working group status. As we know, the EVPN draft came back to the working group, and we still need editorial review, mostly on chapters 3 and 4. So it would be good to get some volunteerism to help us take care of that. The back-to-back frame draft has gone through area director review, and the comments have from Warren have been addressed, and a new version of the draft is available, Warren. So you can check that out. So the next working group draft that we've got active is the next gen firewall benchmarking, and we'll take a look at some possible actions on that tonight. And of course, I mean, there's a good reason to finish up these working group drafts because the proposals keep coming, and you know, shall we make way for new work? I think we should. Most of these proposals are very familiar to us now. So we're a little bit behind on the milestones, and in fact, we've got some other ones coming up, which are also in pretty good jeopardy here. But we'll deal with the milestones at some future date. Let's just try to get the August 2020 ones out of the way here as soon as we can. Okay. Any questions on the working group status? All right. So then, basically, I've already described the EVPN status in some detail. There was a new draft 06 put up in August. It corrects a lot of small errors in the later sections, but I think those sections still need a read through. So Would anybody care to volunteer, basically just to do an editorial pass over those two sections, and help Sudin out with the wording? Yeah, Brian.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I've got you now, Brian.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your volunteerism. Okay, so well, that's what we needed, somebody to take a look at those sections and then send a mail to the list, and mark it up however you can do it most efficiently, and we'll get that moving forward. Thanks very much. Okay, so then we're on to our next topic, which is next generation firewall benchmarking. And I've got the slides right here. And this should fix that, right? And who's going to present the firewall slides tonight?
I am, and Bala will help me on some of the more technical questions if there are any.
Very good. Okay, please proceed.
All right, so the current draft is, as was posted, I guess it was about maybe a couple weeks back. It's version 5. I sent a message to the list outlining the changes and the updates, but I'll just go over them here. We added next generation IDS IPS requirements to the abstract, or the fact that it was covering that off. So Al, that'll mean that we'll need to change it from next generation firewall, the title anyway, to network security devices, or next generation network security device. I'll talk to you over email about that. We changed the scope to add the validation of security effectiveness configurations. That's now in Appendix A. We changed requirements in 4.2 .set configuration. We added a feature table that directly addresses the IDS IPS area. That's now table 2. We added a description for security features to the table 3. And then since next generation IPSs, IDSs tend to operate in bump in the wire mode, we added text that indicated that ACL configurations is not recommended for these devices. And then we added a new subsection 4.2.1 security effectiveness configuration, and this section now describes how to select CVEs. Next slide, Al.
Okay.
So then we updated the test case name in 7.1 and added, again, wording addressing IDS IPSs as a possible target to the abstract. We updated the objective, and then we added guidance on how to document a tested traffic mix. On 7.1.3.4, test results validation criteria, we removed C, which has, and I neglected to add more detail on this, and I can send you some updated slides for the archive, Al. But essentially, we removed C, which covered off latency, and the reason we did that was that it proved to be a very, very complex test that we didn't feel had adequate validation as to it remaining in there, and we didn't want to leave something in there that we couldn't get behind as far as we tested this. So we decided to remove it. And we updated, or we created a contributors section, which is section 10, an acknowledgement section, section 11, and then the Appendix A, we removed the NetSec open traffic mix descriptors and added a test methodology, security effectiveness evaluation criteria section. So that is the new Appendix A. Next slide, Al. So next steps, basically we're going to need to submit a version 6, but version 6 will not have any significant changes to it unless the working group asks us to make some changes, and we're in agreement, of course. But the version 6 will contain grammar and punctuation changes. The following two bullets were mistakes; they shouldn't be in there, and additions to the acknowledgments section. And we would like version 6 to be submitted for working group last call. I'm a little fuzzy as far as what the final steps go. I know it needs to go, the area director needs to review it. I know the ISG needs to review it, but I'm not too sure how to get to there from where we are right now. Al, can you outline for me what we need to do?
Of course, Brian. This is you and your team's sort of first pass through the process, and so we've had this draft in the working group and for a while, over a year, and it's been a working group item, a chartered item for over a year, and we've had really good interactions and good reviews recently. And it sounds to me as though the authors have kind of reached the point of diminishing returns here, and they might benefit from any last comments that we can precipitate by performing the working group last call kind of function. Now, in the benchmarking methodology working group, very often we have more than one working group last call, especially if we get a lot of comments during the working group last call. But so we might have a noisy one, and then we might have a quiet one, or if everybody's satisfied with the draft and they've read it and they say so during working group last call, then it may just be one. We'll see. So let me just. Because we've got a tool for this now. Let me ask a question of the group. So, who has read the next gen firewall draft?
How do we respond to that?
Well, in the place where you've been looking at the participants list, there should be like a poll that comes up there, and you get to click the first two buttons to either raise your hand if you've read it, if that's a yes, or do not raise your hand if you haven't read it. And so far I see 7 people who are raising their hands, and one person who's indicating that they're not going to raise their hand, which is eight people out of 22. The other I'm not doing the math. The other 14 are not going to play along. But look, if 7 people have read the draft and there's no objections to starting a working group last call, then I think we can go ahead. So I'll ask the question then. Are there any objections to starting a working group last call? Oh, and I also see that Tim Winters has joined the queue here. So go ahead, Tim, enable your mic.
Hey, Al, and Brian, it's Tim. Brian, I know you guys said in the draft that you removed the NetSec open traffic mix. Did you just replace it with just regular background traffic? I haven't had a chance to. I'll look at this as part of the working group last call, but I thought while I had you here, I could ask.
We replaced 7.1 with more extensive guidance on how to on what to do, but we've essentially decided that we're going to we haven't been able to address the differences between the test tools and what we generate, and it's not within the what we consider acceptable limits, and
okay.
rather than that allow that to delay the draft, we sort of stepped away a little bit from the NetSec open developed traffic mix, because we didn't feel that we could defend it adequately. We're still working on it. We're still hoping, but hope springs eternal, right? So.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think this document's ready for a working group last call, Al. So I'll review that as part of the process.
Very good, thanks, Tim. Go ahead, Bill. I see you in the queue. Oh shit! I think I knocked you out of the queue, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, okay, that works. So I've read halfway through the document. I do have some grammatical notes. I could wait until you could commit version 6 and I could review it again, or I could send you what I have and you can use that. I don't know.
By all means, send us what you have. I mean, if it's redundant, that's perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so we'll record a working group last call for next generation firewall. Brian, one thing I remember you mentioned was I think you wanted to change the file name.
Yeah,
because
if possible, we'd like to change it to refer to it as what's in the title here, benchmarking methodology for network security devices.
Yeah, usually we don't change the file name, even if the name of the draft or the title of the draft changes. It's just easier. It's just easier to keep the history that way.
Okay.
You know, a lot of drafts end up having kind of funny names because of that. But this one's pretty close. I think you'll agree. So. You know, all you have to do is open it up, and we'll all see the new title. So
okay.
That works for me.
Sure.
I hope it works for you. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not a deal breaker.
Right. I didn't think so. All right, and I think we'll probably have a working group last call as long as a month on this because we've got the Thanksgiving holiday coming up in the United States. And you know, basically, a lot of people trying to finish a lot of stuff up at the end of the year. So I think a month on this is probably a reasonable amount of time.
Once I get the changes from Bill, I'll roll those into the document. Then you know, Bala and I will do a quick review. Bala will submit it as the XML document. So we'll try, depending on how long Bill will, if Bill is able to get me the changes this week, we'll roll out the updated document at the beginning of next week.
Very good. Well, thanks to you, Bala, and you know, basically all the friends of ours in NetSec Open for working on this, and I think you've gotten some good reviews before. We may still get some more. So
Great.
excellent.
We look forward to it. We really do.
Excellent progress. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is one that I've already talked about quickly. The back-to-back frame draft. It's an update to RC 2544, and we have, as I said, the Warren Kamari's area director review has been dealt with in 03 version, and any comments on that, Warren?
I was typing my response, but apparently I've forgotten how to type. Nope, I hope to push the go button on that in the next couple of days. Please poke me again if I forget. This week has been understandably busy.
Yes, understandably strange for all of us and busy. Very good. All right, thanks, Warren. Okay, so now we're off to our proposal topics, and Vladimir Vasilev is going to just say a few words about the Yang data model. In fact, I've got some notes here that I can bring up that were part of the agenda. So let's see, here we are. Yeah, I know I saw him here before. Oh, but that's right, he was having trouble with audio. Yeah. All right, so I'll try to take care of this for him. Vladimir updated the draft on September 9th, adding a mechanism for the synchronization between the generation systems. And, he had another crack at doing some work during the hackathon. I was hoping we would hear a little bit about that, but perhaps he'll send mail to the list about that topic. So, so we've moved through the last two items very quickly. Very good. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the methodology. Oh, I'd like to ask. Let's see here. Is this thing still? All right, I can end this session then. So right, okay. Has anybody read the has anybody read that draft? The one we just talked about. Yang data model for network interconnect tester management. All right.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Seems like not too many.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Vladimir. Yes.
Yes, I had some problems with the audio, but now I'm back. If you want a short update on the draft, it is a minimal change actually. We just added some synchronization, which allows the generation to be started in a certain moment in time by adding a timestamp. So epoch data leaf that defines the moment where the generation of the generator starts. Not much has changed, and some of the commands on the list were addressed. So this pretty much that.
Okay. Okay. Good. And I think you're getting some good interactions with Raphael's draft, the automation of VNF benchmarking that we're going to hear about next. So so that's good too. I think that you know, we'd like to get some more readership on both these drafts, and yeah, because it looks to me like nobody's read it. So at least according to the poll I just ran. So well, let's try to change that, folks, and help Vladimir out with some reviews. Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the methodology for. Oh, but one other thing first here. I thought I saw Sarah for a moment, and now she's gone again. I guess she's having trouble connecting. All right. Well, we'll keep on rolling here. So the next draft is methodology for VNF benchmarking automation, and that should be this one. Yes. Okay, Raphael, are you with us? That's a shame. I don't see Raphael. Okay, Sarah just sent me a quick email. She says she's trying to get Miteco working. I hope she can contact someone else who can help. In the meantime, we'll just take a quick look here. In version 5, which were the major technical changes? Basically all of these. In fact, Raphael mentioned in a message to the list a fairly extensive set of changes, which almost amount to a refactoring of this draft, and I think that's good. And as I said, there's been some good interactions on the list between Raphael and Vladimir, who have a sort of a modeling of the test generator control in common. So let's hope that Raphael joins us later, but otherwise I think we'll move on to the next topic for now. Okay. So the next draft is 5G transport network benchmarking, and that will hopefully be presented by Luis M. Contreras. Yes. Oh, that's great, Luis.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Al. So I will go through the draft. This is the version 02. Yeah, let me go through that. So next slide, please. Okay, just a refresh about the motivation of. Well, sorry, but I'm listening a bit of echo. So, well, I will try anyway. So just refreshing the motivation of the scope of the draft. So essentially, the motivation is why because 5G networks are being gradually deployed by operators. So essentially, what would be nice is to have a way of benchmarking solutions in a manner that we could obtain somehow a better idea of what could be the expected performance of the different technologies, different solutions that we could deploy into the field. So the scope of the document would be to overview available solutions and to define guidelines to assist the benchmarking of 5G transport networks, identify the gaps in terms of documentation, or, methodologies and tests that could require further work. There will be pieces that are probably already there, but others that are not there. So the main intention would be somehow to get this inventory of what is there and what is needed. And finally, to provide guidelines on 5G transport network benchmarking, just to have a basis of comparison and a basis of, a kind of reference for this. Next slide, please. So I will go now through the updates from the 0.0 version. The 0.1 version was not presented. By lack of time, I think that it was, I don't remember well, it was in Montreal, I guess. So in this version 0.02, I will provide the updates from 0.0. So essentially, we have added some discussion on KPIs for assessment of the technologies, and we have covered both control and management plane KPIs and data plane KPIs. In the case of control and management plane KPIs, essentially, we leverage on the idea that is being developed in TEE's working group about this IETF network slice controller that will be the one in charge of creating, let's say, the IETF network slices. So assuming or taking as a reference the RFC 8456 on SDN, so we think that it could be possible to consider the same kind of KPIs, so performance, scalability, security, reliability, etc., etc. So probably, or the idea would be as first step to consider the same KPIs as reference, right? Regarding the data plane KPI.
Luis?
Yes.
Just a quick question here. Remind me, is RFC 8456, is that one of benchmarking methodology working groups RFCs or a different one?
Yes, it's
okay.
from Bmwg. Yeah.
Good. Okay. That's great. I'm glad you found that. I hope it's helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Then regarding the data plane KPIs, the idea would be to focus on existing and measurable service level objectives, bandwidth, latency, jitter, all of those related with the idea of 5G slice, basically. So apart from that, also, and because there are some novel attributes being considered for 5G, the potential KPI other potential KPIs to cover could be things like the capability of isolation between the transport technologies and some other kind of attributes that could be required for 5G. And here, essentially, what I have in mind is what is being done in GSMA with this generic slice template. Generic slice template with essentially list a number of attributes and SLOs. So probably from that point we could identify, let's say, potential KPIs to cover. So all the work in GSMA and 3GPP, essentially. So next slide, please. Further updates are, essentially to start looking at potential topologies to benchmark. And here I borrow essentially this figure from one of the drafts in TEE's working group that I think that summarizes very well what kind of topologies or what kind of architecture we could consider here with, for instance, in the radio side, considering front-haul network and mid-haul network. So these are, have particularities in terms of strict requirements like latency, bandwidth, and so it could be interesting probably to consider. And finally, to leverage on all the idea of network slicing, and with this respect to link with the work that is being done in this working group, in order to complement that perspective with the idea of benchmarking. And essentially, later on, once the this working group is developed with all the mapping to the different technologies, to have some means of assuring or benchmarking that all those capabilities apply for the different technologies that could be identified. the different mappings, let's say, at the end. Next slide, please. I would like also to mention some other activities that could be related to this one or complementing this one. So in all this activity around 5G, and there are some other working SDOs working in different from different angles. So probably this could be a piece complementing all of them, or we can see in the other way around. So we will have other pieces complementing this work. I would like here just to mention two of them. There is a new work item in HCINT, which is a committee for interoperability. And these work items are dedicated for end-to-end testing and validation of vertical applications over 5G networks and even beyond. But well, by now the point is only 5G. So they are looking at essentially the KPIs that could be observed by the vertical industries and all the users of 5G networks. So they are looking essentially to applications. And there is another activity, another ongoing activity as well in ORAN. ORAN is the alliance analyzing the interoperability of this radio functional split, where we mentioned before all these ideas of front haul, mid haul. So they are basically looking at the interoperability of the radio components. So there is an ongoing activity also for defining tests for front haul, mid haul, and back haul networks. So it could be something to look at as well, or to see how we could complement all that work. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the final one. So as next steps, essentially what we identified for sure to collect feedback and comments from the working group, to see if there is interested people willing to participate and provide inputs and views. This would be perfect. Also to keep working on the draft. So we acknowledge that this is not yet mature at all. So it requires much more work and essentially, well, identifying the requirements and characteristics of 5G and all what we have mentioned before about attributes, SLOs, and so, and essentially to work in the different dimensions right now, the control plane, data plane, management plane, or even architecture to identify what could be, let's say, the final lines of work. And for sure, to prepare a new version for next IETF and to provide corresponding updates as today. And that's all from my side. Thank you all. Oh, can you hear me?
It's a lot easier for folks to hear me if I unmute. We can. I'd like to ask the group if there's any questions or comments on your latest draft. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so there's a question from on the chat list. Lewis, first is the IETF the right place for this work, or should it rather be standardized in 3GPP or ETSI? And Karsten says, I am active in ORAN WG9, which works on something potentially similar. And then the second question is, since this working group is about benchmarking, what do you plan to define in the draft to support RAN benchmarking? This would require advanced simulators. Testing with real user equipment would not work well for benchmarking, I think. And that's two questions.
Okay. So regarding the first one, if this is the proper place, I would say yes for the technologies that are in the umbrella of, or behind the umbrella of IETF. So, for instance, clearly all what could be an outcome of this working group, I think that the home for that work will be here in IETF. What is outside, probably not. Probably the home will be other places. It's true that there are some blurred frontiers in some of the aspects, and we have mentioned ORAN. So that could be some co-leading work, but I mean, clearly the idea here would be not to duplicate the effort. So whatever could be done in ORAN, for instance, for front haul, probably could be just simply mentioned here as a reference and not going further, or even complementing if they do not consider certain technologies. because by now they are not considering all the technologies, all the different kind of technologies that could be in IETF. So essentially, the approach here would be complementary, not duplication. The second point was about testing with real devices or with emulators. I think here essentially what we could do is to define the benchmarking methodology. Probably we could refer to that point, but I think that we will not enter in further details in this respect, in the sense that maybe we can highlight the difficulties or the problems that particular implementations could bring into the topic, but anything else. So we will, let's say, look at the problem from the transport technology, IETF technology perspective. And so if we, let's say, identify SLOs, we are identifying SLOs of the IETF technologies, not from the devices the radio part, for instance. So this is my view.
Bill, who was it who asked the question, and can we maybe get an answer from them on which ORAN group is potentially doing overlapping work? I think they're divided up into about 8 different categories of work there in ORAN.
The group is the working group 9, which is for transport, essentially looking at transport.
Okay. So would they overlap both these areas, Luis, the control and management and the data plane, or just one of them?
No, they are focused on transport and data plane, at least by now. With the work being done now, the potential conflicting area could be the data plane KPIs. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask this question that came to mind. You say that this you have another draft, I believe, that's proposed in the TEAS working group. Is it still at the proposal stage, or any? How does it look toward the path toward adoption?
Well, let me summarize a little bit what is being done in TEAS. So in TEAS there is a specific design team working on network slice and the concept of network slice, how to land this concept to IETF technologies. So there are a number of documents running in parallel. By now, the closest to the adoption would be one dealing with definition of what is an IETF network slice, and another one describing the framework. So these are the ones close to be adopted. Not yet adopted, are outcomes of the design team, but not yet adopted by the working group. There are some discussions yet in topics like isolation, for instance. So, and apart from that, there are other bunch of drafts, but individual drafts by now. So this is more or less the status, but there is some activity that is somehow running. So here, this other activity would somehow complement from the perspective of how to benchmark how this concept of IETF network slice could be later on mapped to the different technologies, like for instance, Emerald Immersion 6, or I don't know, or flexible Ethernet or whatever. Not sure if I was clear enough.
To me, as though there's going to be some time between when the actual protocols are decided for the control plane, management plane, and when between now and when those decisions are taken for IETF. So so that, I mean, that we could sort of take a generalized approach like we did with the SDN controller benchmarking at first, and try to work it that way. But that's up to you. I think it's a bit more work to try to generalize things completely and make that work. And then for the data plane KPIs, I think I definitely want to have some kind of interaction with the working group 9 people for what they have in mind, so that we clearly avoid overlap if we do anything in that space.
Okay. Yeah, totally agree. Just for clarifying, this working group 9 is looking in this front hole, mid hole. There could be other areas that are not covering, but not yet relevant for us. This is for sure to, I mean, probably we don't have the answer yet, so we will see along the time to what extent there are gaps that are not covered by them, and gaps that are not yet covered by IETF, because probably other gaps have been already covered. So this is precisely the intention of this document, to somehow identify the gaps and try to propose work for those gaps.
Okay. Bill, I see you're in the queue.
Also responded, thank you for your response, Louis. With regard to test tools, I suggest to compare with the next generation firewall document. We also added new test methodology, which requires test tools to support. I would suggest you work with test tool vendors to ensure that the methodology you plan to define is implementable and in good IETF sense, to first conduct a full proof of concept before an RFC is approved, close paren. I am quite worried that testing with the single UEs does not do justice to the problem, and that the document might become a dead horse if there is no way to implement UE benchmarking across RAN and 5G core in reality.
Okay, thanks for the comment.
Yeah, and so Al, what are you recommending?
Let's follow up on some of these topics with respect to the activity in other working groups, and whether Luis wants to try to take on a sort of a generalized thing for the control and management plane KPIs, absent of IETF network slice, another topic decision on the protocols there. And then for data plane KPIs, investigating that further with ORAN working group 9 and avoiding the overlap. And like our last commenter suggested, getting somebody from the test equipment vendors on the author list would be good.
Okay, noted.
Okay, thanks.
Sure thing. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
All right. Anything else on this draft?
Not from my side.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for updating it and presenting it again, Luis. This can potentially be a very interesting topic, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
All right. So our next draft up is considerations for benchmarking network performance in containerized infrastructures. And I've got the slides right here. And KJ Sun, I think, is going to present for us. Is that right, KJ?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so hello everyone. Today I will present about our draft considerations for benchmarking network performance in containerized infrastructure. Actually, at the last time we presented in the IETF 106, at the time the draft version was 02, and then now is 05. So I briefly describe about some updates and then our works in the hackathon. The next slide, please. Yeah, so this draft is to describe difference and the additional considerations for benchmarking containerized infrastructure compared with the VM-based infrastructure. So in this draft, we describe some network models and then the additional benchmarking scenarios and then several resource considerations. Next slide, please. Yeah, so from 02 and then 03, we just adding some little description in the chapter 3 about the huge pages and the NUMA, and then you can check in our draft. And then next slide, please. Yes, and then from the 03 to 04, so at the time, so we add some benchmarking experience in the chapter 6, which that we was working on the IEEE Hackathon 106. And so in that benchmarking experience, we used the implement the environment using the user space networking model. And then we tried to verify CPU allocation of native Kubernetes CPU scheduler. So we compare with the CPU pioneering technology, which is CMK developed by Intel, and we use the shared mode and the exclusive mode for pioneering CPU. And additionally, we also try to figure out about the NUMA affinity. So we assign the CPU of the network interface and the container into a same NUMA zone or different NUMA zone, and depending on that, we want to measure the network performance. And for the traffic generator, we use TREX at the external side, and then we use the IMIX traffic pattern for measuring. And the next slide, please. And then unfortunately, at the hackathon, we cannot succeed or the implementing and the testing because there are some errors. And then main errors was some routing table doesn't work when we send the package using TREX. And then we figure out that it is come from the IP packet forwarding rule is first only the default the virtual routing and forwarding functions in the VPP switch. So the at the last figure, we used that two VPP switches over the default switches to connect to the each network port of the pod. But we try to at the time, so BRF1 and BRF2 cannot interface, cannot route the packet to the pod. So we solved that problem by assigning one interface directly to the default routing and forwarding functions, and then the other is connecting to the VRF1 to the pod. So next slide, please. Yeah, so then this is our test result, and as you see, some performance is reduced between the VPP switch and the pod, and then the same NUMA affinity increased the network throughput by about 50%, and in the switch only model is just packet is going through the VPP switch and then going back to directly to the TREX without the routing to the pod. So you can see the metrics. So results for that. And the next slide, please. Yes, and then this version is 0.5. So update from 0.4 to 0.5, we adding one more chapter for benchmarking experience, and then we implemented and tested at this hackathon 109. So in the case in this experiments, we use the different user space network model, which is device pass-through with the SR-IOV and then DPDK. And we want to verify huge pages impact on the network performance because that we already wrote in our document that in the containerized infrastructure, we can set up the small size of the huge pages. So we want to whether it is impacted to the network performance or not. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we uploaded some infrastructure setting and the manuals in the GitHub, and then this left figure is the data path. So in that figure, the traffic generators send the packet to the Kubernetes worker node, and then the network interface card is enabled the SR-IOV, so they forward the packet bypassing the kernel space and directly go to the network port of the containers. So for that, so physical hardware specs are similar what that we used in the last hackathon, and then we used Kubernetes, one master node and one worker node, and then we used the Mertos CNI and then the CMK for CPU pining, and SRIV plugin with the DPDK function. Okay, next slide, please. For testing, we assigned 4 GB memory for each containers, and then 2 scenarios of the huge page settings. So one is the 2 MB huge page size, and then 2048 pages. And another one is the 1 GB huge page size, and four huge pages, for number of huge pages. And then for traffic pattern, we're using T-Rex. And then firstly, we try to the Ethernet frame size. So from the 64 bytes to the 1.5K byte. And then we try to the iMix traffic, but we did not succeed yet. So we are going to test for that. Okay, next slide, please. So this is our the test result, and when you see the result, and the huge page size does not affect to the network performance itself, because we think that the Ethernet frame size is limited to just 1.5K bytes. So even we just have the pages size is the 2 megabytes, so it is just enough for just store the packet and the processing packet. But this result is just for networking, which means that the container just have some pseudo functions to receive packet and then just forward it to the another network interface. So we need to more some complexity of to measure the exact the performance measurement. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is there are some troubleshootings and issues. So for testing, we have several some problems. First is the out of the memory error, which that sometimes port access to the non-allocated memory. For that, so we reconfigure, and then the reallocating the process was required. And then when we benchmarking for different huge page size, so one huge page size should be tested for each time. So when we change to 2 megabyte huge page size to the 1 gigabyte huge page size, so we need to different configuration of group settings or plugin settings or Kubernetes settings should be required, and then it should be repeated many times. So that it takes a lot of time to change configuration and also to it may be the high risk to be error. And then so the last words is that I told before. We just using the pseudo functions and then just networking the performance. So we need to consider some impact on the application process. And then also we have to consider some trade-offs between the network performance and the resource utilization. So we will try to test it later. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is our last slide. So for updating the draft to the 06, so we're including our result and then our troubleshootings of the last hackathon, and then updating some up-to-date network technology, and we also consider to expand some other benchmarking scenario, which is, for example, east-west traffic benchmarking scenario, and then we also plan to the next hackathon, the 110. We are going to find items with some implement different network topologies or the different test scenarios. Okay, so that's all of my presentation, and all comments and suggestions and questions are always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, KJ. I see we have Benson in the queue. Please go ahead, Benson, with your questions on the draft.
So I guess I had a question maybe more related to your presentation. A lot of it seems quite specific to the hardware because you talk about NUMA allocation. I'm wondering how portable your methodology would be. There's a lot of different hardware, and while NUMA effects are important, is there a way to kind of write things so that measurements can be done for different architectures and where NUMA effects also differ?
Yes, for testing in our environment. So one of some different the hard thing was that even though there are some virtualized infrastructure, but depending on hardware, depending on the network technology, they have some the dependency of the hardwares. Such as some NUMA technology. For example, we use the CMK for CPU pining, so it supported some hardware, but in case of other hardware, we cannot support it very well. So I think that yes, they maybe have some hardware specific some effect for that.
So, KJ, one of the things that Benson's question brings up to me, and something I was thinking about, is that basically, going back to the beginning here, you're writing what we call a considerations draft, and you know, I was sort of wondering, you know, where are your detailed procedures and so forth, but actually in a considerations draft, you're kind of examining the problem space and trying to help other people become aware of the problems we're up against when we do try to go on and do more with methodologies measuring network performance in the containerized infrastructure space. So if that's consistent with the way that you want to proceed, then I think you're probably on the right track. But as Benson mentions, I think you want to you know, try to tip your hat toward generalizations as well, and maybe maybe some different architectures as you make some statements and recommendations. It would be good if the draft had some general recommendations that we'll be able to follow in our in future development of metrics and methodology.
Okay, so I got you and Benson's point. So we need to some generalize for that. So okay, so I will try it for that.
Okay, good, and it's always good to make some recommendations as well. So the generalization and if you can, and then some recommendations. I know another way to go on is to look at the other architectures and to say, we looked at this NUMA architecture in some detail, but it has parallels to the this alternative architecture, in ARM or whatever.
Okay, I got your point.
Any other questions? Yeah, one question I had was related to the network interfaces. It looked to me as though you had two 10 gig interfaces here, and probably the same thing here, right? And then and then when the results come out, we must be looking at so two 10 gig interfaces would be here. If we must be looking at the aggregate of bidirectional results here, right?
Yes. Yeah, so I think actually, so in the hackathon, one of our team members just testing for that, but yeah, I also looking some weird when I see that graph, but just we can say that yeah, so we're using T-Rex and then we're sending the traffic until the 40 gigabit BPS. So and then they came to the results for that. So actually we need to check about this result, and then as you said, we also can check about our hardware specification or network port specification, the difference between the previous hackathon and then this hackathon.
Yeah, good idea. All right. Any other questions on the talk or the draft? Okay. So it sounds like you still got some development to do here, but it's interesting work, and anytime you put test results up, you're going to get some interesting comments back. So I encourage you to keep working on it, and then in our future meetings we'll perhaps look into adopting this, KJ.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. All right. So next up is the discussion of future prospects for 3 drafts: the multiple loss ratio search, the probabilistic loss ratio search, and the network function service density draft. And Maciek, are you with us? Oh no. Well, I don't see Maciek. Let's. He did send us a message to the list today, one of the key things that Maciek was raising had to do with the multiple loss ratio search draft, which Vratko Polak and Maciek have written together, and Maciek was under the impression that 2 meetings ago we adopted this draft as a working group draft, but I don't think that was ever ratified on the mailing list, and it doesn't show up in the meeting minutes according to Maciek's message to the list today. So in general, this is a draft that is designed to search for not just the 0 loss ratio, but other levels of loss ratio, all in a combined search algorithm, which is pretty efficient if that's the kind of thing you want to do. And it's also very straightforward. It's a very fast search algorithm. They use it in the FDIO open source project and their systems integration test. So has anybody read this draft, and would anybody like to show sort of some interest in it? Especially interest to review it. Oh, yes, Gabor, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I didn't have time to read it. I just did a quick look in it, and I think it's interesting. I would like to read it and comment it. And I wanted to ask the authors if they have made a comparison in efficiency between this search algorithm and the traditional binary search. Do you know about it? It has happened? So they compared the performance.
Yes, I think they have, and the results are basically the kind of thing where you would have to conduct multiple binary searches for each different level of loss ratio, and because this because this searching is pretty much going on in parallel, the multiple loss ratio search is generally quicker.
Good. So I myself interested in RFC 2544 compliant 0 loss search, and unfortunately I have to perform it many times to comply with RFC 8219, and it requires a lot of time. So if there would be a better algorithm which supports 0 loss search, but just faster than binary search, I would be happy to use it.
Yeah, that I can't answer directly, but there is a chance that this might be faster than straight binary search as well. I think the very first step is to kind of take a jump from the maximum level down to the whatever the received throughput is, and then search around there. So they kind of make a big step right at the start.
Okay, I will test it with my SAIT perf.
Very good. very good. While you're doing that, Gabor, I'll put in a plug for the binary search with loss verification, which you can find in Etsy test 009. It's designed to test in the in the virtualized environment where we can't get rid of the transients that that we have to live with, but those transients don't really influence the true resource limitations. They're just big interrupts that happen once in a while, and they foul up the binary search because of it. So I'm not sure if I provided that reference to you, but if you send me an email, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so you're willing to review this. Are there any? I've already reviewed it, and I will probably do that again. Are there any objections in the meeting to asking for working group adoption of this draft? Okay, hearing none, then I think we will go ahead and do that. So we're looking at working group adoption for MLR search 003. It would probably be a good idea if Maciek and Vratko brought it out of the expired state before we do that, but we won't stand on circumstances here. All right. So I think the other two we're going to have to let go. Unless Maciek's with us now. The probabilistic search is a lot more complicated, let's put it that way. And as opposed to a deterministic system of search, there's an attempt to define find this critical load satisfying a target loss ratio. It makes assumptions which are often unrealistic for some systems, and there's a tie-in to TCP good put here. When I've looked this over, I've kind of felt that it was a little bit experimental. I was sort of looking for some sort of verification that what's being promised is actually being delivered, and that the additional detail is valuable. And I'm sure Vratko has some of those things in his mind, but we're at this stage. I'm still looking for more. With that quick introduction or reminder about this draft, any other comments? Okay, so we'll take this discussion topic to the list, as well as the network function service density topic that Maciek raised. I mean, basically, he's talking about many network function services on the common, what does COTS stand for? It's it's a general purpose computing platform, and he's got these different diagrams here where the VNFs or the network functions are either connected through the vSwitch or the vRouter, or they have like a memory interface that helps them speed up their interconnectivity, and lots of considerations to take care of this. But many of the problems are basically right right here in the virtualization technology and the many choices that you have when this is a cloud network function, and the cloud networking plugins that are possible. So again, I think this is one we're going to have to take to the list. Any comments on this particular draft? Okay, well, then we're on to our final topic here, which is it's a quick talk here by Gabor Lenz from Budapest University, and you know, I'm again reminded here, Gabor, that back at the beginning of March, my very last international trip, I was in Budapest. I really should have looked you up. And I'm sorry for missing that opportunity, but in any case, you know, welcome to BMG again. You helped Marius Georgescu with his work some time ago on the IPv4 or IPv6 benchmarking topic, and it's good to have you back. And please go ahead with your talk.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome. Could you switch on the next slide, please? Thank you. So this RFC, in which I participated in a little extent, was written mainly by Marius, and it covered the benchmarking methodology for IP version 6 transition technologies. It had to be written because RFC 5180 excluded them from its scope. So Marius has divided these technologies into different categories, and none of them was a single translation category. And SIIT perf addresses this category, in which case one of the ports of the tester and of the device and the test is IP version 6, and the other is IP version 4, and there's a translation between the two in the device and the test, and the tester has to test such kind of devices. SIIT is one representation of this group. Of course, SIIT is stateless, N86.4. However, there is also stateful N86.4, which is not in the scope of SIIT perf yet. So this little tester supports some traditional tests like throughput and frame loss rate. These are the same as in RFC 2544, and some tests are different. For example, latency has been redefined in 8219. It requires to send at least 500 frames marked, and their timestamps for at least 500 frames instead of only a single one, like in RFC 2544. And it's also included packet deliveration, which is a new test compared to the traditional benchmarking RFCs. So my tester supports these tests. It doesn't support yet back-to-back frames because of performance issues, but I'm thinking of including also that later on. So some general features. RFC 2544 requires to be able to test with a single IP address pair or 456 destination networks. My SIIT perf supports any number between the two. And it also supports fixed port numbers. I mean that the fixed frames and the same test frames are sent out. And RFC 4814, which was recommended by UL, that I should support that, and I implemented that. And I also implemented that I use increasing or decreasing port numbers because it's very easy. And of course, besides stateless N86.4, you can use it for testing pure IP version 4, IP version 6 routing. Could you go to the next slide? Just a very little about implementation. It is important because I wanted SIIT perf to be flexible and high performance. To support both, it was possible that I use simple binaries for the different measurements and a bash shell script which executes the binaries. For example, if I would like to use throughput testing, there's a tester for throughput, which is also used for packet loss rate testing, and a different binary is used, a different shell script is used for throughput and frame loss rate testing. Just if you want to test throughput, you implement a binary search, and if you want to do some frame loss rate testing, then you just test at different frame rates. And as you see in the slides, it was written in DPDK, the binary, and it is also flexible in the way that it has some different input possibilities. Some parameters which do not change using consecutive executions, they are put in the configuration file, and others are put in command line so that they can be easily changed from the bash shell script. Could you please go to the next slide, please? And there's some results. So the new feature is random port numbers. So I compared its performance with the original one without random port numbers, and it seems that its performance didn't really decrease due to this random port numbers. So I have to rewrite the test frames just before sending, and of course I have to generate 2 random numbers per frame. I use a merge and twister, 64-bit merge and twister, and it still remained very fast. So I think it's a good performance. So I tested IP version for kernel routing, and this was enough for that. So I think for some SIIT implementations, it's more than enough. So I just want to offer it for the list members. So if you are interested in such kind of testings, even if you won't just test simple kernel routing or anything else, you can just freely download it and use it. And I would be happy to hear if you like it, if you require some new features. I would be happy to improve it. And yes, please go to the next slide. So there are some papers about it. The first has already been approved, and the second one is under review. So they are to describe how it works. And of course, there's a link for the GitHub storage. There's a source code. So if you have any questions or comments, you can just tell me now or write on the list or write me personally. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Gabor. Any comments on Gabor's presentation? Well, thanks for sharing it with us, Gabor. I think that I mean, one of the things that that struck me here is this, you know, obviously the random port numbers. As you say, it has an impact. Is this one of the things you plan to write about in your draft?
Not really. It's some different things, but I didn't have time to update the draft. Sorry. I will do it for the next IETF.
Right. That's what I mean. In other words, some of your measurement experience is what you can bring to bear on future versions of the draft, right?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. And let's see. Is there anything else you've learned here that will influence the draft in the future?
Well, I didn't have time. I honestly admit that I didn't have time to think about the draft, but I will do it in 2 months.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I'm sure some things will come up, and especially if other people pick up your tool and give it a try, you know, your utility, then maybe, you know, we'll all learn something more together. That would be great. So let us know if you do that on the and if anybody downloads the source code and tries it out, let us know on the Bmwg list, please.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Gabor. All right. Well, we've come to the end of the agenda, and I don't see anybody who was missing who has perhaps rejoined us. Let me just check in with Bill here. Bill, so far I've only got I think I've only got 2 action items for the chairs to run a working group last call on the security, next generation security devices draft when that appears in 06 form, and then to run the working group adoption on the multiple loss ratio search draft. Did you pick up anything else?
Everything. Yeah. I wanted to confirm which one you were adopting, which you just indicated, so that's good.
Okay. Yeah, just MLR search. That's I think that's the one that's received the most comments and interest so far. There was even Masiek was responding to some comments just the other day, so that's good. All right. Well, any other business? Any other requests for the floor? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay. Well, then it remains for me, Bill, to thank you very much for helping out with the notes here. You typed them into Code EMD, right? Bill? Hello, Bill.
Well, so on this thing, I can hit the publish button on it. Will that save it or something like that?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I just pushed it, so yeah. It says Al Morton owns this note, so it looks like it might have done it. And I'll save a copy just in case what I just published gets lost.
Good. I just pressed publish too, and maybe that's doubly good. But
hope so.
In any case, thanks for struggling with this for the first time around here, Bill. I really appreciate it. I was stuck all alone here tonight. And as everybody can see, it's getting pretty late here for me, getting late for Bill. So I think we'll call it a night, and we'll talk to you on the list, and see you at the next meeting in the spring. Bye for now, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Al.
Thank you too.